Hi, this is David with EV World News. We talk about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. And today I've got some special guests with us
Yeah.
today. I've got Guy Primus and Rob Cotter from ETA, and we're going to talk about their special vehicle, the Elf. Anyways, guys, welcome to my show. How are you doing today?
Fabulous.
Doing
And
well.
I,
Glad
and I
to be
don't want
here.
to forget, I've also got our editor and founder, Bill Moores, hiding there in the corner.
I'm just going to, sit back. I'm going to enjoy this. So,
No, so we're really happy to have you guys join us. Now, are you guys in the Carolinas or Boston?
I'm in North Carolina, and Guy is in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I'm in the heart of
Okay.
Los Angeles.
Now, where do you make the Elf at?
So currently, we're not really making any. We just acquired the company Organic Transit a few months ago, and
Okay.
we just got a warehouse, and we got tens of thousands of individual parts and pieces and things like that.
Okay. When was the Elf first created?
2012.
2012. And it was being made, it looks like the Elf company. So you guys made it, then were you acquired by somebody else? Is that what happened?
So we made them for about 8 years. We were surviving on revenue, which is, people think that's a great thing, but not necessarily.
yeah.
And it made it difficult to scale. And then we had a company come in and say, we're going to take over your whole Series A round. And we're like, fabulous. This is perfect. And they signed a term sheet and all that jazz. And then they didn't come through with the proceeds and said they would prefer to take us over in distress. And that's what they did. And they got the company and did nothing with it for 3 years. And so we were just able to acquire it a few months ago.
It's
Nice.
interesting, though. I mean, because I'm very familiar with Rob's story, and I'm recently coming on board and joining him. But it's interesting how a lot of people who are interested in investing in a company use time to their benefit, right? So in this case, they kind of bled the kind of clock and left Organic Transit in a difficult position. And luckily, Rob was astute enough to manage his way out of that situation. But typically, a lot of people, that's the end of the company. Once that clock runs out, you're through.
Well,
I do capital advisory consulting, and so I see a lot of the strength and weakness in the EV market, and I talk about this a lot on the show. A lot of your EV companies are fragile, and it's difficult sometimes to attract capital to them. Everybody wants, at the moment, nobody wants to invest in something that's not making money right now.
Right.
And it's been that way for the past 2 years, really solid. Okay. There's not, they call it dry powder sitting on the sidelines in the VC world, but
Unless you're an AI company.
AI is
Yeah.
really hot right now.
Yeah.
AI is really hot right now.
Can we back up a moment here for everybody who is not familiar with the Elf, and maybe Rob, if you would sort of describe what it is you built back and rolled out in 2012, which of course I remember because I was a young, vigorous young man back then. So tell us about the Elf. How did it come about, and what is it?
So I've been playing around in this space for many decades. As we discussed earlier, I worked with Paul McCready from AeroVironment.
Right.
I was part of the Human Powered Vehicle Association back in the 80s.
Yeah.
Building high-speed velomobiles and such. And then in 88, I put on the first solar car race in the U.S. That was in Visalia, California. And as time went on, I kept on looking for where's the vehicle that we want and need.
Yeah.
Where's the super safe bicycle? And it wasn't happening. A couple of interesting things, but usually they're one-offs. So I designed it from the beginning as a full production vehicle that anybody and everybody could get in and utilize. Gave, decent weather protection, decent power up the hills, still legally a bicycle, carry a passenger, and a lot safer. And so a friend of mine, Michael Lewis, and we worked on it for really about 2 years, exchanging back and forth of designs and things. And then when it was ready to go, we actually built the first prototype in working actually model prototype. We did many little oddball prototypes.
Right.
But the actual functioning one we did in about 3 months. 3 months later, we did about 7 of them. 3 months later, we did all the tooling for manufacturing. And 3 months later, we sold about 50 of them on Kickstarter and delivered those in 8 months.
So this is basically, just to help everybody understand, this is basically a recovered recumbent in a way. I mean, it's got a nice, attractive shell, one of a better term, cabin, whatever, over the top of it. And then it's a recumbent, but it's also electric assisted recumbent, right?
Yes, and most importantly, it's solar.
Yeah.
And
that's what's over your head.
Yes, that's right. So the solar is the roof, of course, but that is structural in that vehicle, and it's about 100 watts. So people in southern climates, sometimes they don't plug them in for years.
Yeah.
And that's not advised, but we had people calling us up and say, it's not getting the same range it used to. And then, well, how long you plug it in for? Oh, we never do. So they just leave it out in the sun and ride 20, 30 miles a day and just do it again tomorrow.
Yeah.
So
how,
yes, it's a solar assisted recumbent trike, tadpole design, 2 front wheels with a Trilon composite body and an aluminum frame.
Okay.
And does the passenger sit behind you?
Yes, it's a tandem.
Yeah.
Okay. And what is the max? So what is the max electric speed?
So originally the laws for a bicycle in the U.S. was 750 watts, 3 wheels or less, and 20 miles an hour or less. And that was legally a bicycle. Okay. So we went by those rules. And as things morphed, the rules changed. You could get up to 28 miles an hour with a high speed electric bike. And so that's what most of them do now is 28.
That's what we call it class 3. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you don't need a driver's license. You don't need a.
Well, that too is changing.
Is it?
Is it? I know it's still you don't.
They just introduced that the new bill in Cal. I don't know how it'll affect a trike type recumbent, but they've introduced legislation to require license and insurance on e-bikes. So
federally,
interesting.
No, state.
California.
State of California, yeah.
Guy, maybe you want to hop in here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not familiar with that legislation, but I would say this, right? If you use the motor, that would make sense. But what we have here is a vehicle that you don't have to use the motor, right? You can just use it as a recumbent bike, and so that's the allure for me personally, is that you can navigate the hills, and if you need to pull the hill, you can. With the motor, but it provides an incredible amount of fitness, and exercise as well.
Right. Yeah.
That's really awesome. It's kind of interesting to see this. The only picture I have is the one from that news article you shared. Although I'm sure there's plenty more out there. I mean, it's quite a unique design. I assume it's quite aerodynamic, but this is a 100-watt solar panel on the top.
On that version there, we'll have on the new models we'll have increased wattage, and it's amazing how safe it is. You mentioned the aerodynamics; it's about the equivalent of a single bicycle rider down on the drops.
Sure, yeah,
which is pretty good for a big vehicle that has 2 people in it.
Because most of your resistance, I mean, as you probably know, Rob, I've ridden electric bike for over 20 years now, and most of the resistance is you upright in this area on you is what you're having to overcome generally.
Right. And
so this has about that same resistance.
Yes.
So you experience about the same as you would if you were just pedaling a normal bike.
Yes, it kind of performs like a really exceptional pedal bike. Like if you were a top athlete and you could, occasionally peak at 25, 28 miles an hour, maybe 30. Well, that's what this does. It goes about 40, 45 on the downhills, which is pretty exciting. But that's just gravity. But there's about 100 videos on YouTube about the Elf. Some of them with many millions of hits.
Yeah.
No, that's crazy. It really seems like an exciting
Yeah.
design. So you guys did about 850 of these vehicles before you lost control of the company?
Right, right. We delivered 850. We probably produced a little over 900. I think in total, a lot of them were very, crude and uh, just prototypes. But yeah, we delivered 850 and all made in the U.S. We delivered about 15% of them overseas. About 7% of them went to people with certain disabilities. Um, we sold them to about 25 universities and colleges, police departments, traveling home nurse services in Montana. Um, so really, it's amazing how far they got out there.
Uh,
That's awesome. What and I realize we've had a lot of inflation in the last 4 or 5 years, but what were they selling for pre-COVID?
Yeah. So I think the average price pre-COVID was, I think the average worked out to be $7,800.
Hmm.
Some people, bought the Mac Daddy, which would be like, over $10,000. And some people got the stripper at that time, which was probably like 6,500 or something like that. Originally, we sold them. Our strategy was just to push them out on Kickstarter, get 50 of them out there for $4,000 a pop, lose about $800 on each one,
yeah.
and get all that feedback of people putting on thousands of miles.
Hmm.
And, the average elf owner was doing 2,300 miles a year.
Really? Wow.
Yes. And, you consider that with a bicycle, which is, somewhere around
That's
30
50 a
miles.
week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's 7 miles a day people were averaging. That's
Can you
pretty
talk a little
considerable.
bit about the demographics? I mean, basically, who was buying them and where they were using them and how?
Yeah. So we did this pretty extensively. We have, 60-page reports on this.
Oh,
And,
wow.
and, about 80% of them were using it to replace their second car.
Okay, good.
About something like 15 or maybe more, maybe 20% had advanced degrees.
Okay.
The most popular profession was architect.
Yeah.
And, you'd think, oh, these would be great in the South and such like that. But the majority was sold, kind of from the Mason-Dixon line up north.
Yeah.
And you talk to cyclists and they're like, well, I like to ride all year, but this is the bike I'm going to ride this winter,
Yeah.
and they're really good in the snow, actually, really
Yeah,
good.
I
Huh.
could see that because I've watched people ride bicycles around Omaha when it's icy, and I am like, how do you not wipe out constantly? I mean, I really don't know how they do it, but this would seem a lot better for, something along those lines. Yeah, and one of our big things with the idea of riding a two-wheeler e-bike is you're kind of at the mercy of cars. And we live in a state where people really like full-size pickup trucks and full-size SUVs. There's a lot of large vehicles on the road, and I've been hit twice riding bikes.
Oh,
So um I not in never in Nebraska, but I've
Only
been hit.
once.
Yeah, and my ankles click when I walk up and down stairs. Okay, and they have pretty much ever since I was a teenager. I got hit by a drunk driver when I was 15, I think, 15 or 16.
wow,
I think it was. But
wow.
anyways, um, that takes up a little more space. It looks a little bit. I mean, honestly, that's probably as big as a smart car. you know,
So it's
and
4 foot wide, 8 foot
mhm,
long, 5 foot tall.
yeah,
And one of the safety features, of course, is the big, bold, colorful body and all full turn signals and brake lights and everything. But you take a position on the road and they can't ignore you. So, we're told as a cyclist to kind of move out a little bit and take your spot. Well, this takes the spot for you. There's
mhm.
about 18 inches between you and the area on the outside. It's actually more distance than on an SUV. And
From the seated position to the exterior door.
yes, well, to pass the exterior door, because
Right.
actually it's everything's not everything, but it's created with crumple zones
Okay.
that
Okay.
actually flex and stress. It's a tensegrity structure, actually, but we've tracked about 25 accidents with cars and trucks, and some of those trucks going 55, 60 miles an hour when they impacted the Elf, and there was no deaths and no serious injuries in 10 million miles.
Wow.
Huh.
So
That's
it's
amazing.
the integral safety of a lightweight vehicle, a low mass vehicle, right? So when you have two cars impacting each other, they're both fighting for the real estate. Neither one wants to move, and they just crumple.
Right, right.
And you hit an Elf, and it's like, bing.
Yeah,
It just wants to go away. It's like a ping pong ball
yeah,
where you have this full shell.
yeah. The G forces for the Elf driver might be considerable. So
Well, again, no serious injuries.
yeah,
So
well, that speaks for itself. Yeah.
yeah, so we're planning on a series of IP regarding the safety of this type of design and structure.
Okay. Let's talk about where you guys are now. I mean, the company basically was taken over by this other entity. They apparently did not continue to produce vehicles.
They tried.
Okay.
They put significant money into it and hired people to work on them, and they built two over like 3 years, from what I understand.
Oh boy.
And
Yeah,
they
it
just had
really
a tough
speaks to the
time.
knowledge and passion, and you can feel it from Rob talking, but the
Yeah,
knowledge
exactly.
and passion that he has from kind of being the inventor, but also someone that really wants to see this thing kind of on the roads here, right? And
Yep.
we see them out here in Los Angeles, and I think there's a really interesting opportunity out here in particular. But the fact that he got 800 and plus out the door, right? And someone who actually had all the blueprints, all of the IP, all of the parts, could only get a handful, right? That really
Yeah.
speaks to the kind of passion, and the knowledge.
So then let's talk about how you ended up then acquiring the company back, taking it back then.
So a couple of years ago, I guess it was during the pandemic, we were talking with some wealthy folks that wanted to create another company, and they wanted me to run it, and we were looking at the various ways to do that. And in the process of that, they found out that organic transit was back up for sale again. So they looked at it, and the offers, the requesting price was ridiculous, and they just blew them off. And as time went on, I just kept on sort of monitoring things, and hopped in maybe like 9 months later, and was probably in conversations with them for about 9 months or a year.
Okay.
And they apparently made some very poor investments in lithium mines in Mexico.
Oh.
After they bought some mountain, and I don't really know this for a fact, the president of Mexico, Obrador, said, "Yeah, you just can't come in here and buy our resources."
Yeah.
So I think they lost a considerable sum, and that really pushed the Elf on the back burner.
Yeah.
And so as time went on, I just kept on monitoring it, and we were able to strike a deal.
Yeah. Had they moved production to out of North Carolina down to somewhere else then, or was it still there?
They did two prototypes, from what I understand, in Arizona, and two production vehicles in Winston-Salem, which is a couple hours west of me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you were able then to get in there. Bring Guy into this. What Guy? You're on the left coast. What do you do? How'd you get involved?
Always on the left coast. So Rob and I met because my brother actually was one of his purchasers of the Elf, and it just so happens that my brother has a few kids, and I have a couple of kids. And when I came to North Carolina, my brother's like, "Hey, check this thing out." And I thought it was interesting, very cool. And again, I fancy myself. I wish I were as creative as an architect, but I am an engineer, right? So it was appealing. And as Rob started talking about it, it became more appealing. But what really got me interested was my kid's reaction, which is like, can we go take a ride on the Elf every morning? It's like, we don't want to eat breakfast. We don't want cereal. We don't want to watch cartoons. Can we go for a ride on the Elf?
Can we go for a ride? Yeah.
Yeah. As you're raising kids and you want them to be active and you want them to be engaged, it's the kind of thing that a family having that in their garage, in their carport, on their back patio, whatever, is something that really will bring the family together, right? And that's what we saw. The thing was that my brother would drive them, and he would have to take them one at a time. So we're looking for kind of to expand the product offering so we can have the Partridge Family riding, right? So that's
right.
So I got a weird question. So how do you secure this? So like, say you go shopping or something, how do you secure this in the parking lot?
So it has a parking brake, not a big deal, but so hopefully that keeps it from moving. And then it has a key switch. So if someone wanted to steal it, which just happens, some of them have been stolen, they're probably not going to get too far on their own pedal power. And it weighs about 160 pounds, but it's kind of bulky. So it's probably 3, full-size adults to lift it up and put it in the back of a pickup truck or something. But the new version we're going to have is going to have an electric lockdown. So when you shut it off, the wheels just can't move.
Okay. Yeah, I just, not that we have a big problem where we live, but, bicycle theft is a huge problem in, a lot of parts of the world. And,
just look at when they periodically dredge the canals in Amsterdam.
Right, all the bicycles.
All full of bikes.
It's a whole nother country's worth of bicycles down there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So when I let Guy know that I was getting the company back, he had just, exited another company, right? Is that the right term? Or
yeah, that's about right. Yep.
Yeah. And he's like, Rob, I'd really like to get in on this. And I was like, holy mackerel, this is fabulous. Yes. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like I said, living here in LA, I can see the opportunities where you look at golf carts, right? And where they are. And you see them, obviously, on the golf course, right? Maybe not LA Country Club, but every other golf course. You see them in retirement communities. But the place that I see those vehicles, those gas-powered vehicles, more than anywhere else is on studio lots. And so as the entire studio system is shifting to being more environmentally responsible, and the actors are driving that, and the producers are driving it, and people like Steven Spielberg are mindful of kind of the impact on the environment. It really is meaningful to have something that you can get back and forth to, and from the cabanas to the sound stage,
right?
And in style, right, in safety, and environmentally responsibly. And so that's really we have the World Cup coming, we have the Olympics coming. Long Beach is doing some incredible revitalization, and Culver City has actually engineered its city to be a bike friendly, kind of. So it's annoying when you're driving a car, but you do see a lot more bicycles, and it's very safe, kind of in Culver City. And so we think that's a prototype for the development of these type of eco-friendly, low emission vehicles. Yes, but more importantly, the type of vehicle that the Elf is, which is zero emissions, right? When you're pedaling this thing.
Okay. So it sounds like you have some experience with the Hollywood scene. Have you worked in that industry, or?
You could say that, yeah. So for a number of years, I ran Will Smith's production company, Overbrook Entertainment. So Will Smith and James Lasseter, we're doing fantastic movies, but they're creatives, right? No one wants to kind of mind the lawyers and kind of the agents. Well, the agents are, they're creative as well. But for a long time, I ran their production company, and before that I spent time in the music business as well, and so I've been back and forth between music and technology in entertainment my entire career. Since leaving A.T. Kearney, I was a management consultant when I came out of business school.
Okay. All right.
And cool. Actually, the thing that's really intriguing to me, right, so all that is great, and I see the opportunity, but I also see opportunity on the supply chain side, right? So I ran Georgia Tech School of Industrial Engineering Advisory Board for a number of years. And so supply chain is, I would say, my first love. It's kind of what got me into technology. And so seeing the opportunity for the manufacturing and distribution of the Elf is something that I'm fascinated by. There's so much untapped potential there.
Cool. Great. So, hey, so Rob, we were having a kind of conversation. You're apparently thinking about some projects beyond or sort of building off of the elf. What did you share with us? Maybe some of that?
So we actually have a couple of products that are on the smaller side than the elf.
Okay.
That's kind of, there's not a lot out there like it. We're going to hold back until we're ready to launch it. And then we have another model that is larger than the elf, kind of approaches the golf cart category, but it's still under 500 pounds.
Okay. And this is all sort of hybrid in the sense of you doing this and having assistance from the motor then.
No.
No.
So one of the things we witnessed, if we just built the elf to be electric vehicle, it would have been so much easier, right? It was very challenging to make a little vehicle that you could pedal and make sense with.
Yeah.
Right. That you'd actually enjoy pedaling. That was the challenging part. But in people's minds, their mind is, oh, bicycle, it's cheaper. And, we used CVT transmissions for the cyclists. We used race face cranks. We had 2 chains, jack shafts, you name it, right? It was very complex. And then you have to think of the toe, heel, knee relationship,
right?
All those things, right? So on some of the other models, we will, like the larger one, pedaling will be an option.
Okay.
Because many people some people don't want to pedal. If you don't want to pedal, you shouldn't have to pay for it then, because it's pretty expensive, actually.
Right. Well, this is, in some respects, this is what we're seeing with the cargo bike industry, where you've got FedEx and that group of people that are doing urban package delivery, and they're using what is basically out in large cargo bike, where you've got the main wheel in front, and then you've got a reverse tadpole arrangement, and then you got a big box in the back to hold all the packages. Is that kind of the direction some of this is going? You see going?
Some of it, yeah. We actually, years ago, we were in negotiation, or not negotiation. We were in talks with UPS, the post office, FedEx, and that was 6-7 years ago. There wasn't a lot happening back then in this regard. But the amazing thing about the elf, and yes, it's the solar component, it's the weight component, it's the aerodynamics, all those things, but it's kind of our DNA is making it super efficient and not unusual for elves on occasion to hit below 10 watts per mile. So, think about that and compare to not only just, electric vehicles and mopeds and scooters, but also even bicycles. They really don't hit those numbers. And that's in large part because of the solar, but also it's pretty light. And it's funny thing is, like, I'm kind of addicted to losing weight in the design because I come from like a cycling background and a racing car background. But when we put the second person in the elf, it really didn't affect its efficiency. Because that person, that extra, say, 150 pounds, was now stored energy. And the only time you're tapping into it is climbing hills or accelerating. The rest of the time, it worked in your favor.
Right, yeah.
So it was really this, so many things with electric vehicles flip the dynamics around.
It's similar to aviation. I mean, you burn your fuel going up. But once you get into glide mode, the planes rarely use any fuel.
It's very similar to that, yes. So,
but that's pretty neat. Now, you were saying somebody towed a solar trailer behind it. So what kind of weight would that have added to them towing that trailer and camping?
Oh, I bet his trailer is certainly over 500 pounds, maybe as much as 8 or 9.
Wow.
And he towed it up Mount Whitney, 14,000 feet. And he's in his 70s. He's like 74 years old or something.
Oh, I love it.
So, it's amazing what people do. But when you actually focus on super efficiency, so the heaviest thing about the vehicle is the person inside of it, everything changes, right?
Right.
Instead of like building a chassis that can handle 400 horsepower and a big, either battery supply or fuel tank and these upholstery and the sunroofs and all the glass and everything, and then you got one person riding in it. If you gear it back the other way, leaning heavily towards like bicycle technology, then you can really make something that changes. An elf, the heavy duty elf, we called it a tactical. It was 160 pounds, had a 550-pound payload. A lot of cargo bikes are bragging about that now, and you don't get any shelter from the weather. A lot of times they're not three-wheelers, so you don't get that stability and not the safety aspect.
Yeah. So what are the plans here going forward now? You apparently just recently acquired the plant or the IP, as well as, I imagine, the whatever stock they had left. Where do you go from here now?
So, kind of the basics, right? Is kind of massaging the customer list. We have many thousands of people that wanted an elf and never got them. Many thousands. And just from the little bit of information that's been squeaking out in the past week, orders have been flowing in.
Oh, cool. Great.
That's amazing.
And
great.
Yeah, it is amazing. I'm trying to figure out where they're coming from, and the fact is that people always wanted these things. And, when we sold them before, people had to pay 100% upfront and wait a month to 3 or 4 months to get it.
Yeah.
And, lots of people that want to spend, $10,000 on this neat thing, they'll go find something else to spend it on.
Yeah.
So one of the things we'd like to do ultimately is make sure not only there's a full inventory in supply, but that they can be financed. So for X amount per month, you're in. You can have it on Tuesday.
Right.
And I think the other thing to keep in mind is that if you were to really spell out, and again, we've done this work, but to spell out the archetype customer, right? who is it that is buying this, right? We're talking with someone with a high level of disposable income, can use this, the EV, use the ELF year round, and also has in a location that is conducive to safety, right? And
Right.
that's Los Angeles, right? If you really start looking at all of those factors, we check all the boxes out here. And so that's one of the great things about me. I spend a lot of time on the East Coast. I spend a lot of time in North Carolina, but being out here in Los Angeles, there's a ready and willing community that is, as soon as they can get their key, they're off and riding, right? They're riding on the beach. They're riding in Culver City. They're riding around the studios. They'll be riding to the events at the Olympics and the World Cup, right? And so that's really what we're excited about. And so being here where not only that, but a lot of influencers live out here as well, and so seeing it, in these pockets of EV enthusiasts and micro EV enthusiasts is one thing, but seeing it on television and seeing it your favorite celebrity riding one is a totally different story. And so we're in the infancy of that strategy, but it's something that we're super excited about.
Okay, so when do you?
Go ahead. About $10,000 now.
So we're going to have a couple of different models, and the world of supply chain makes things a little bit, adds different dynamics to it. So we're hoping to release some less expensive ones, some simpler ones. I mentioned 2 much smaller ones, but they're not really elves. And then to extend all the way up into kind of the luxury performance golf cart category.
Okay. Well, the thing is, I'm real familiar with, for instance, I'm sure you're familiar with Archimoto that makes the electric 3-wheeler, but it's not a pedalable. It's designed to replace a car, and it's kind of a difficult concept, I think, for the U.S. simply because of the lack of warm climates. Of course, I'm used to living in the Midwest, where we have colder weather. Now, in your particular case, if somebody's pedaling the device, they're out for exercise too. So it gives them another reason to be out in the elements. And you're talking about a person who's kind of used to maybe running or cycling already when it's outside, and so it's not quite the same inconvenience for those type of folks. Plus, your design is a whole lot cheaper. We're talking 60% cheaper than what theirs is, but and at the same time you're getting exercise out of this. I really like this. I see this as there's a lot of applications for this, and there's a lot of parts of the world where there's not access to gasoline, but there is access to electricity, and there's certainly access to sunlight.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now,
So we used to bring up that model all the time in areas where someone might hike 5-6 hours a day to bring back 5 gallons, 10 gallons of water.
mhm.
Now they charge us up in the sunshine, zip on down to the water supply, fill up a 55-gallon drum of water, bring it back. You're done in an hour and a half or something, however long it takes to, pump the water in, which is solar operated from the ELF. And then when you get back to the village, it serves as a micro utility station that powers the computers and the lights and the radios and anything else they need.
Yeah, and so a lot of these use cases, we geek out on them. My favorite one, I'm on the board of an organization called LAist out here, and we did a podcast called The Big One, right? And it was talking about what happens when the major earthquake hits, because we haven't had one. Northridge was 20 years ago, 25 years ago now, but we haven't had a big earthquake. And we know that when the earthquake comes, you're not going to have power. You're not going to be able to access gasoline. And so how do you get around, right? And so equipping these things with a disaster preparedness mindset is another, huge opportunity for us. And again, we know that people will pay handsomely to make sure that they're well prepared. And so, again, those are just some of the use cases, and some are even cooler than that. But, that's, no one wants to be unprepared. And so there's so many opportunities for us. And I'm just glad that Rob had the vision to actually get the first ELF out on the road.
You need to remake an episode of The Walking Dead where instead of driving all the cars they're driving these. Because we all know that 10 years after civilization collapses, they're not going to be siphoning gas out of cars because that gas is useless.
Yeah, Mad Max, right? We see Mad Max pull up in the know.
They're gonna need their solar powered elves.
Yeah.
So in New York City, when Hurricane Sandy happened, hurt a lot of people right away, right? Because it's such a dense area. But because there was no power, there was no gas pumps. And we have, customers riding around Brooklyn in the ELF. They were the only things kind of scooting around. And they said, wow, what would it take for us to have enough power to, kickstart that gas pump for these people? And there's some truth to that, if they had a little powered trailer that they could pull up there. But when things, get really, really bad, where do you get your power from? And what, for our whole lives, and we still hear it all the time. Oh, it's ridiculous to think about solar power on a vehicle. It just can't do anything. Yeah, well, if your vehicle looks like a Cadillac Escalade, you're right. It wouldn't even power the air conditioning. But if the vehicle is under 500 pounds, if it's, topping out at, say, 40, 50 miles an hour, if it carries, 2 people, and do it all the time, then it becomes really efficient, and solar has a big impact.
There was this was slightly different, but in Queensland recently there was a blackout, and there was a news article about a lady who her kid's dialysis machine didn't have power, and she charged it from her BYD that had bidirectional charging, but they didn't have solar at their house, but they had an electric car, and so they were able to power that. And then there was other people who had electric cars, went around, people couldn't open their electric gates because they had no power, and so they couldn't get off their property. So he would go over and he would help them and give them some juice, and he had solar back at his house, but he was going around with his electric car helping people out of problems. He said, just hit me up on Facebook or whatever, and I don't know how they were doing that on their phones, but
that's there's an even earlier precedent than that with the Fukushima reactor. When that went down, the folks at, I think it was was it Mitsubishi? No, it was Nissan. It was the Nissan, but I think there were some Mitsubishi IMEVs too that were providing emergency services because there were no gasoline-powered ambulances or anything like that to get around. So they were using leafs and IMEVs to provide support to some of the communities around the that were affected by the outage of the Fukushima reactor.
Right. And again, I think that we definitely understand that there are batteries and solar power now that people have in their homes. Those
Yeah.
are few and far between, right? And I think, my parents had installed solar panels. They don't have a battery though. So you can charge it, during the day, but what happens in the evening? And so there's a lot of thinking that Rob is doing around the innovation
Right.
around just these small batteries.
All right. Well, guys,
So one question: when can we expect the next one to become available? When do you start fulfilling those orders?
So, a generic comment might be about a year, but
Okay.
we possibly will release a small number of them prior to that
Okay.
as sort of betas for the new generation, or maybe even some legacy ones that tapped into our old tooling, because
Right.
they were amazingly efficient, and we can never make enough of them. So here we are.
Okay.
There might be a soft release of a few of them in the shorter time, probably about a year for full production. And then probably the smaller vehicles I mentioned, they should be released before that.
Okay. And all this being done on the East Coast, or are you looking at California as a possibility too?
So it's probably kind of both locations, California's proximity to the Pacific is a big deal. The incentivizing that takes place there is a big deal. They do have an amazing workforce, and it's pretty common knowledge that when a new vehicle comes out, about 80% of them sell in California. So it has all sorts of good reasons to be there. On the one hand, the other hand, I'm here and building away. So we'll probably be in both locations as well as some others. About 85% of the parts came from the US on the original ELF.
Okay.
And that was fun. That was neat. That was very challenging and really expensive. And I would love to do that again, but I don't know.
Economics, yeah. So you can follow Elon, down to Mexico and tap into that BYD plans to build plants, and you got that whole thing happening just across the border.
Elon Musk is super innovative, but I'm from Pittsburgh, right? I'm a blue collar guy, so we really want to keep everything as much as we can here and do this, kind of cost effectively. There's incredible workforces in all these colleges that have these young folks that really want to change the world, and we're going to avail ourselves of those workforces as well.
Good.
Guys, I really appreciate you being on the show today. And this has been really cool information. I'm excited to see your product come to market again. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to end the stream for